Dawn made a thin line along the eastern edge of the world, a seam of pale metal in the sky, and all of King's Landing waited for it to brighten. The city was never truly asleep. The tannery fires smoldered, the river rats pried at scraps near the wharves, and a watchman's drifted whistling rose off Cobbler's Square like a faint, uncertain wind. But those were noises of habit, stitched into the dark. The morning, when it arrived, would be the noise of intent. Maester Othanel stood beneath the rookery tower, sleeves rolled to the elbow, and watched the line of light sharpen. He had a bowl of seeds slung against his hip and a knife in the other hand to cut twists of salted meat for the hungrier birds, the ones with the pale ringed irises that glared at him from their perches. Every creature under the Red Keep learned some interpretation of rank, even the ravens jostled by habit and memory. He fed the stubborn ones first to keep the peace. "Quiet!" he murmured without meaning to shush anyone. The word drifted into the chill and faded. He was not a tall man. He had the inward-turned shoulders of a scholar and a face lined by long years of squinting at texts written in two small hands. His hair, or what remained of it, had grown stubbornly white without ever becoming luxurious. In his youth, he had dreamed of a life in Old Town's libraries that left no mark upon him but ink and dust. Time, of course, had other designs. The links around his neck were weight enough to remind him of choices he hadn't imagined as a boy. He cut the salted meat into thin strips and let the ravens take it, one after another. They clicked with satisfaction, and the sound, somehow, pleased him. When he had enough quiet, he listened for the faint scrape of scale on stone that meant one of the smaller dragons was restless in its lower cavern. The dragon pit had been dug and rebuilt and corrected so often that any man who said he knew its whole of it was a liar. But Othanel was fond of truth. He admitted what he did not know. He slid the knife back into its leather pocket. A boy, small and clever-faced, climbed the steps with the careful speed of someone who knew not to run near the birds. "Maester," the boy said, and then, remembering courage just in time, "Good morning." "Good, not yet." "Morning, not yet," Othanel said. He pointed at the boy's hand. "What is that?" The boy held up a tight-wrapped cylinder of leather, knotted with black thread. On the surface, a small glass bead had been stitched into the seam, a bead of obsidian no larger than a pea, iridescent when the first streak of sun hit it. "From the East Tower," the boy said. "No name." "No name," Othanel repeated. He had the cylinder in his hands before he realized he had moved. Where did it come from? Skylines, black-feathered rider. She didn't land, dropped to the hook and turned. Skylines. Not the usual word for the messenger rails that the rookery boys called loopers. Someone had taught the child a precise word. Perhaps one of the dragon keepers, who knew ropes and hooks and how to throw a weighted line exactly where it needed to fall. Othanel broke the thread with care, slid the obsidian bead into his pocket, and unrolled the leather. Inside lay a narrow strip of parchment, the kind one might cut from the margin of a longer document, a sentence cut out of a page for discreet delivery. The ink had dried to a clean, dark brown. The script was legible and too balanced to be the hand of a harried clerk. 3 lines, 3 words each, spare as an ultimatum. Magistrix present sunrise. Freehold envoy landing. Cord revision immediate. Othanel did not think in exclamations, and nevertheless the words, when he read them again, made a feeling in his breast very like one. The freehold. He had written those syllables 1,000 times, and he still felt he should be washing his hands before and after he touched any document that bore them. Old Valyria still stood, cobalt roofs and bone-white spires, and the 14 flames banked beneath a net of tunnels and wards that no outsider had mapped. Old Valyria stood like a great fire tempered under glass, and the glass had never yet cracked. It stood with all its families and old laws and older prerogatives, and its envoys did not arrive unannounced, except that now one had. Sunrise. He looked up, judged the brightness. The boy, sensing a chance to be important, rose onto the balls of his feet. Othanel spared him a brief smile that cost him nothing. "Run to the Lord Steward's offices," he said. "Wake Lord Steward's if he sleeps. No, wake his hand-a-joint. Tell him the Magistrix arrives by sunrise and that the Red Keep must be ready in half an hour. Then run to the Grand Master of the Dragon Keepers and repeat yourself, in the exact same words. Do not forget any of the words." "Yes, Maester," the boy said, almost bursting with acceptance of the charge. He darted down the stairs, quick and sure-footed, a thin blade of a child slicing the air ahead of himself. Othanel rolled the little parchment again and slipped it into his sleeve. The glass bead was warm in his pocket, or else his imagination supplied heat where there was none. He braced both hands on the stone rail and stood there until the sun stacked itself higher above the low-tide mudflats on the far bank of the Blackwater. Smoke rose from the brick kilns along the river road. The lip of the city brightened into color, and the scattered fires of watchmen became unnecessary. Across the yard of the Rookery Tower, a girl of 9 or 10 walked along the narrow parapet with her arms out, practicing balance. Her hair was a dark river down her back, and her bare feet were silent even on the gritty stone. Othanel noticed her with a trace of alarm and then with recognition. Princess Maelora. Though her father called her Lori and her mother, when vexed, called her by every name she had been given at her naming feast, as if layering them might press sense into the child. She walked with the poise of someone who knew the wind and trusted her body. Othanel held his breath anyway. "Your Highness," he said. She pivoted and smiled at him over her shoulder. She had the easy smile of someone for whom even the difficult parts of life had been arranged. She bore Valyrian features softened down the line. Eyes pale as pewter, hair that would go silver if she let the sun speak to it often enough, and a face that carried both her father and mother in its angles. "Good morning, Maester," she said. "How many ravens?" "Fewer than when I went to bed," he said. "Hungry as ever. Like dragons. Like dragons." She hopped down with a small dancer's leap and landed with her hands on her knees, grinning. Othanel put one hand to his heart and breathed again. "Your Highness, with respect," he said. "If you are to walk high walls, you should have a minder." "If," she said, as if she did not accept the premise that one's feet could be anywhere else but where one chose to place them. Then her gaze slid to his sleeve, sharp as any lord's. "You have a note." "Many notes," he said, and had the presence of mind not to tuck the sleeve further up his forearm. "Your tutors will expect you when the sun clears the tallest tower." "Yes," she said with a sigh that was half performance. "But maybe not this morning." "Why not this morning?" "I heard the Dragon Keepers woke the Ashfeeder." "Did you?" Othanel asked, masking interest in blandness. The Ashfeeder was a name used among the keepers for one of the black-scaled juveniles who preferred coal to meat and who coughed up bright flickers at odd hours, as if the fire in its throat did not know its place yet. "I intend to see her," the girl said. "I have a theory." "I am certain that you do," he said. "Will your mother be informed of this theory before or after you test it?" She smiled again, and this time the smile met no obstacles on its way to his own face. She had inherited her father's ability to coax a grin out of a stubborn room. He had rarely seen it fail. The king could make a household fight into a jest merely by entering the doorway and looking like himself. Othanel wondered, watching the girl, whether it was truly a gift or a well-practiced craft. "I will tell her after," Maelora said, and then her gaze shot to the sky where a shadow moved. It was there, a dark winged shape that was not one of the city's creatures. It cast a long blade across the frost-silvered grass and the Red Keep's uneven stones. It was not close enough to shout, not large enough to frighten even the boldest dragon in the city, but it was unmistakable. The shape banked, caught the new sun, and showed itself not black but a deep marine blue. It moved like a thought. Othanel felt his own thought jar. The note had not been a jest, then. He placed his hand lightly on Princess Maelora's shoulder, not to hold her back but to make sure he could feel her stillness. "Your Highness," he said softly, "go inside, find your mother, or if you prefer, find Ser Corrent first and then your mother. Say nothing else to anyone on your way." She stood with him for a heartbeat longer. Her jaw worked once as if chewing unsaid words. "Will they be ours?" she whispered, and he knew she meant the riders. In her lifetime, dragons were common enough, but each new arrival shifted the mathematics of authority. Dragons were arguments that did not need words. "They are ours," he said after a moment in which he chose which truth to give her. "Because they have been invited, and because we will decide what to do with them." He did not say who he meant by "we." She took it to mean the family. It would do. She ran toward the door, long pale braid flicking her back, and he watched her go with something like relief. When he looked again at the sky, the blue dragon had tipped one wing low, bringing itself around toward the city. If Othanel had liked to say prayers, he might have asked the 30 gods of Valyria, and the 7 of the Sept, and the nameless forces in between to keep it all quiet for a while longer, to let the city fold the news into itself before shouting could begin. He was out of the habit of prayer. He had learned to prepare instead. By the time he had reached the lower bailey, the Red Keep was stretching awake without its usual reluctance. The Lord Steward's hand-a-joint met him on the second landing, hair uncombed, a sheaf of papers under one arm and a cup of something steaming in his hand. There were guards at the door to the king's private rooms. Othanel nodded to them and, with their leave, slipped through. Queen Venara was awake, which meant that someone had done their job well. She sat by the window, and the kind light made a promise of softness the years had not given her. Her hair was braided back. She had a robe half over her nightshirt, tied quickly. The king stood behind her chair, one hand on the backrest, the other flat upon the map table. He had the sort of calm that had to be placed on like mail. Othanel imagined the weight as he closed the door. "Maester," the king said, and inclined his head with warmth. Eroth, son of Venara, who had been given 3 swords at his knighting and had laughed at it, who spoke 6 tongues and did not boast about it, who had carried a burned boy from a stubble field in the Crownlands and then stopped to apologize for overstepping the boy's mother as if the apology were a matter of state. Othanel had known lords who wore their nobility like armor. This one wore it like his own skin. "They are overhead," Othanel said, no preamble, no formal naming of the freehold as if it belonged in the quiet of the morning. He held out the leather cylinder. The envoy-styled magistrix, immediate revision of the accord. Venara, without looking at her husband, extended her hand. Othanel placed the cylinder in it. She did not touch the note. The glass bead rolled against her palm and clicked softly. He watched her eyes while she read. If she felt any heat from the bead, he had not. Her face did not tell him so. "Magistrix," the king repeated, the syllables precise. He straightened and slipped into the cadence of command. "Have the harbor made ready. I want the city watch unarmed as a courtesy. Let the rafts be moved to leave clear water to the dragon docks. Wake the court, but no one in the yard until I say. Ser Corrent to meet the dragon in the pit. I will greet the envoy at the steps." Venara closed her hand around the message. Beneath her robe, her nightshirt was plain linen, her style since girlhood. She did not look like someone to whom the world bent as a natural consequence of her existence, and that had always been among her strengths. "Magistrix from which family?" she asked. Othanel did not know. She read it again and shook her head. "No name. The bead is Belarus glass," the king said, and smiled grimly at Othanel's raised brow. "I am not a collector, Maester. I am a man who has had to take dinner with men and women who set too much store by beads." "Belarus," Venara said, "of the 9 old houses that sit on the synod floor. 8 if we count the valor as an adjunct and not full voice," Eroth said, teasing a debate. "We count what we must when we must," Venara said. Her eyes slid to the window. The dragon's shadow went over them. Even at height, it made the brave glass panes murmur in their lead housings. "They are in our sky. Best to meet them in our yard." Eroth brushed the back of her neck with 2 fingers as if writing a message she would decode later. "Best to meet them," he said. Othanel withdrew. There were people to wake properly, words to put in order, and within him, a steadying quiet. Summons did not frighten him. They made him useful. The city roused under his feet. By the time he walked past the dragon pit's outer walls, the great doors were unbarred and men in scaled surcoats stood at their stations. faces upturned to the light. The dragon pit was a vast, domed thing, like an ancient amphora laid upon its side and sliced neat. The risen sun made the glass scales of its roof glow like distant embers. Inside, a heat lived that wasn't exactly air. It had its own shape, its own slow-cycling breath. He found Ser Corrent at the inner doors, helmet under his arm, dark hair flattened on one side by the pillow. Ser Corrent had been a good knight before he became a great one. Othanel preferred men who learned in that order. His sword hung easy on his hip despite the hour. "Blue," Corrent said without greeting. "She's smallish. The wingspan is like a ship's yard. I've seen larger for a freehold flyer, but these things change as they choose. Keepers say juvenile, but I'd say controlled. Look there." They turned as the shadow went like a cloud over the yard once more, low enough now that the blue scales showed sharply, each edged in a darker band, as if a smith had worked the creature one plate at a time and then breathed it to life. The rider was a small figure at that height, but the silver white of hair was its own signal. Othanel watched the dragon fold the air. It seemed to shake off the sky. "She is beautiful," he said without shame. "She is a knife," Corrent said. "We greet the hand holding it." Inside the pit, keepers had arranged the iron landing cradles in a line, their rims painted with the chalk signs that made some riders feel better whether the dragons cared or not. Fires burned in ring ovens to keep the cold from creeping up into the joints. Othanel had always liked the place, for all its dangers. He liked the way the stones remembered each footfall. He liked the way the carts rolled and the way the drovers called to their beasts in voices so gentle it made him want to apologize for every time he had raised his own. He liked the dragons, too, in the way one liked storms, for their accuracy in revealing what things could endure. The blue dragon came down like a falling sail and put its weight onto the cradle with a sound like the first gulp from a great throat. The irons shook but held. The keepers moved as one, some ready with long poles to steady a wing if it flogged, some with buckets of water for the heat snap, some with nothing but bare hands and experience. The dragon's foreclaws curled over the cradle's rim. Its neck arched. It gave a short, almost impatient roar that made a ring of dust shiver along the pit floor. The rider slid down. When she stepped onto the iron grating, she was already unbuckling the throat strap that tethered her to the saddle. A second rider, pale as frost, dropped lightly after her. The first woman pushed her hair back with her palm and looked over the gathered men without concern. She was not tall. Othanel had imagined an envoy arriving with a weight of years, but this one looked like someone at the crest of mastery rather than at the dignified end of it. Her wrists were wrapped in leather that had taken oil and dragon heat enough to darken it beyond any dye. Her tunic was jet. A thread-thin chain lay around her neck, and at its end hung a chip of glass shaped like a tear, the same glass as the bead in Othanel's pocket. He stepped forward and bowed. He did not name himself first. "Magistrix," he said, and then, because the word might be asked to do too much by itself, he added, "The king bids you welcome." "Does he?" The woman said, not exactly a question. "And you are the voice that says so." On this point, the second rider looked around with naked curiosity, like a child in a new house. He frowned at the chalk signs. "These marks, they are for luck?" "For the keepers," Ser Corrent said. His tone was not unkind. "We have men in our service who ride who do not share our stories about why the animals do what they do, and yet they ride." The younger rider rested his hand against the dragon's jaw the way one might touch a door for luck, and he said something in a language that had depths under it like a harbor. His hand left a smear of soot on the blue scales where heat had risen. The dragon blinked once, long. The magistrix turned her head, catching Othanel with that single flick like the point of a thrown knife. "I am Soria Bellaris," she said, "Magistrix of the 6th Hall, sworn reader of the Heat Books, and delegate of the Synod of 8. Othanel inclined his head. The 6 halls were divisions within the family's business. He knew almost nothing about how they apportioned skill among them. The Heat Books were a point of awe and irritation among the maesters, a collection of calculations and recipes for the maintenance of the 14 flames that the freehold refused to share. Sworn reader meant a person who had read and kept the books long enough to be made part of their chain of memory. Such people rarely left Valyria unless necessity called them out like a tide. Your arrival honors the crown, he said. The king waits at the steps. Then we will go to him, Soria said. She touched the blue dragon's neck and murmured a word that had no translation in Othanel's mouth. The dragon let its jaw rest on the iron with the patient resignation of a creature who knew it would be fed. Soria pulled off one glove, pressed her bare hand to the dragon's lower jaw, and stood for a moment as if listening. When she straightened, something in her shoulders altered. A lessening, as if she had put down a physical thing. She turned toward the daylight. In the yard, the king and queen stood side by side. They had dressed as if this day were like any other, which was another kind of message. The king wore leather stitched with soft metal across the chest, the sort of tunic one could wear at council or in the practice yard. Not armor, not courtly, dignified without God. The queen wore a gown of wool deep enough in its red that it read almost brown until sunlight found its surface and woke up the color. Between them, Princess Maelora had materialized, hair brushed, hands folded as if she had been born to the stance. Ser Corrent had slipped into position at the king's shoulder as soon as they crossed the threshold. Othanel took the place 2 steps behind and half an arm's length to the left that he always preferred. Close enough to be heard, out of the line of any weapon. Soria Bellaris did not bow deeply. She inclined her head as one might to a colleague. The chain around her throat caught the light as if it had been forged from sunlight. Your graces, she said, I bring the respects of the synod. They send apologies for the shortness of my messenger's note. A longer letter is being written even now. It will arrive after I do. That is the nature of long letters. Eroth stepped forward 1 pace. You are welcome, he said. His voice did not try to do anything other than be true to itself. Will your dragon be fed? She prefers stone now. She is in a cold wing, Soria said. But my companion would appreciate meat. He will see to it. The young man bowed with unpracticed formality and allowed the keepers to shepherd him aside. Soria watched him go and then returned her gaze to the king and queen. It was not impersonal, her look. It was not personal. It was a gaze trained on what a thing was, not what one wanted it to be. You say immediate revision of the accord, Venara said. She did not carry paper. She did not look for a scribe. On which point? The matter of primacy in eastern waters, Soria said, and the matter of training. At the edge of the yard, someone made a sound of surprise quickly muffled. The king's hand lifted slightly, and the yard went even quieter than it had been. The words were not quite a threat, but they were not casual. Primacy in eastern waters had meant, for 3 generations, that the king's ships would carry a black banner embossed with a pale flame when they sailed beyond the stepstones, and that this banner guaranteed passage where a local lord's banner might not. It had meant a right of trading and a duty of respect in customs and courts from Tyrosh to Illyria's outer piers. It had meant that the great machine of trade grain, glass, iron, cloth, and the mountain of fish that kept men alive through poor harvests turned its wheels at speeds both sides found acceptable. Training meant dragons. Othanel felt the map of the world brighten under the words. What has changed? Eroth asked. A simple interrogative from a man who knew the answer mattered less than the understanding of it. We have steered the eastern waters lightly on your behalf these last years, Soria said. Lightly, but always enough to keep the currents in your favor. The currents are not as they were. The men in Bravos have taken to building ships that prefer shallows and ice. The Volantines will not call our courts as often or as quickly as they used. We have found the garrison at Illyria more obstinate. They answer us, but with delay and too many questions. It is their right to ask. We propose that the rights be adjusted to match the reality we all inhabit. And the training? Venara asked. We will need your dragons on the western archipelago, Soria said. We will need riders who do not speak with our mouths. We will need to teach the hands that steer those animals to move in ways they have not moved before. Because something draws our eyes west, Othanel said before he could silence his tongue. He felt Ser Corrent make a glance he could not see. Sorya's gaze cut to him and then away without offense or regard. "Because the 14 flames do not rest so well as they used to," she said, and her voice did not change. Othanel had expected evasion, metaphors, or courtly dressing of the truth. He had not expected a naked statement. He saw, in the moment she allowed the words to stand, why she had come herself, and why the letter would be longer than any sentence she would say. Truth was difficult to carry any distance. Better to place it where it needed to be laid and let the people lay round it decide how they would step. Eroth and Venara looked at each other with the ease of a conversation that could be spoken with eyebrows. The king's eyelids lowered a fraction. The queen's fingers flexed and then stilled. "You have come a long way to tell us something that many would not say aloud in their own halls," Venara said. "We will hear more. More will be told," Sorya said. "But not all in a yard." "Not all in a yard," Eroth agreed. "Breakfast, then council. You will dine with us." "Of course," Sorya said. "There is a boy selling mussels at the fish market whose mother taught me a word I did not know. I'll want to see him again. But later." Eroth nodded as if he and the magistrix had agreed on something between the words they had used. He lifted his hand toward the door. Sorya Bellaris walked at the king's side. The chain at her throat was not elaborate, but the eye found it again and again. Othanel followed, hearing the great hush of the dragon pit like a sigh, hearing the city begin to argue with itself about what had just happened. Downriver, near the mud-spattered pilings of the old fish market, Callum Longbaugh stood over his brazier and coaxed the coals to anger with a fan woven from reeds. He did not think of himself as poor. Poor was a word he had seen in other men's eyes for other lives, for bellies that had never known a full day. His life had fish in it. Fish meant oil and salt and heat. It meant a soft place on the tongue at the end of one's mouthful. It meant bones to count and a familiarity with the knives that made a boy look useful when men were choosing someone to stand at the edge of the table and keep the thieving hands at bay. He was not hungry. He was not rich. He was 12, if you counted years by winters. The morning had skin on it. When he breathed in, the air pulled a little at the raw places in his throat. His mother had told him to burn rosemary on the brazier to soften it, and he had, because rosemary made the morning smell like a better morning. People would note it, pay a coin more than they needed to. He had learned the small economies early. His mother, Meg with the dry hands, had gone upriver to argue with a yardman who had promised them the pick of last night's catch and then tried to hide half of it in his cousin's basket. She was good at arguing. She said it was one of the things that kept her heart beating. He looked at their basket with pride. The mussels were fat and slick, promising warmth and salt and a day without hard decisions. Overhead, he saw the blue shape like someone had cut a piece out of the sky and moved it. Callum's heart jumped. The dragon turned and caught the light, and for a moment it was a thing out of a story. A jewel, a painted tile, the dragon you would get if you were rich enough to commission one from a painter and demand he take his time. It pulled a shadow over the dock like a blanket and then thinned away, leaving the air buzzing in Callum's bones. He realized he was grinning and tried to arrange his face into a neutral shape in case his mother saw. A woman in a plain good dress came to his brazier, counted out 3 coins, and pointed. He wrote her order on a slat of wood with a bit of char. The braziers along the market row wore skins of heat that looked like bad glass. When he dropped the first of the mussels into his pot, the sibilant chatter of them made him feel that the world was doing exactly what it should. The blue dragon did not come down near the market, but a rider swung over the city in a neat loop and looked, as if counting roofs. Callum could not say what family the rider belonged to. He knew the banners by shapes and colors, but when the sky was that bright and the head turned in that way, you saw face and hair and form more than the shape of ink on cloth. He worked through the rush and listened with half an ear to the market talking to itself. Men argued about a ship that had come in low in the night and scraped the pilings. A girl made up a rhyme on the fly about the king's youngest brother and a woman who kept her bathtub filled with daisies. Someone yelled that someone else had cheated his weights by stuffing lead into his measuring tin. The blue dragon had given them all something to chew on as if it were meat. He did not mind. People ate more when their mouths wanted work. In the lull, when his pot was almost empty and his fingers burned pleasantly, and he could have kissed the beat-up pot for its stubbornness. A woman in a dark tunic with a chain around her neck stopped in front of his brazier like a skiff coming against the current. She lifted her hand and pointed at the basket. Her hair had a color that made him think of the pearl he had once found in a poor oyster. Not the pearl itself, which had been gray as moonlight, but the inner side of the shell that had held it. "Mussels," she said. Her accent was not the accent of his city. It was not even the accent of the men in the East Quarter who said their RS like they were deciding whether to spit. "2 bowls. 2, he echoed, pulling himself straight. "Hot. Hot," she said. Her friend, a young man, hovered behind her with a look of someone who would prefer to be strong than polite. "You're not from here," Callum said, sliding mussels into a new pot. He did not know why he said it. His mother would have stepped on his foot. "No," the woman said, and did not ask him why it mattered. She glanced at the bundle of rosemary tied to the brazier's rim. "Rosemary, for the throat," he said. "Also for the soft taste at the end." "The soft taste at the end," she repeated, savoring the words. "What do you call that?" "The end taste." She smiled. It transformed her serious face into one that seemed very nearly kind. "Yes," she said. "It is the end taste that matters, if you ask the wrong sort of cook." He stirred the pot so the mussels would open properly and told himself not to stare at the chain around her neck. Because staring at any chain was a good way to be pulled into trouble he did not need. The young man's eyes moved restlessly from stall to stall. "Do the dragons scare you?" Callum asked before his sense could catch his tongue and leash it. "The ones that come from the east. I mean, they are the same," she said. "Where they come from and where they are trained does not change their nature. We are the ones who change around them. If I had a dragon," he said, "I would fly low over the river and make the water twist." Her companion snorted, not unkindly. "If you had a dragon," he said, "you would do what you were told, or you would learn what happens when you do not." "Do you do what you're told?" Callum asked, and the young man laughed once and looked to the woman's face to see if he had been permitted to do so. The woman took her mussels as if she had not noticed the question. "You'll be here tomorrow," she said without turning it into an order or even a question. He nodded because he would be. The market happened whether the people in it wanted to or not. "Good." She handed him a coin more than he expected. He opened his mouth to argue. She lifted a finger, just enough to say that he could keep the words if he liked, but she would not be catching them. He did not argue. She moved away, and when he exhaled he felt the little stutter in his chest that he remembered feeling when he had first seen the dragon scholar from the dragon pit stiffly attempt to drink ale as if it were medicine. There were many kinds of people who frightened you by their existence. He did not mind being frightened. It woke him up. In the Red Keep's private dining room that faced the river, where a man could put his forearm on the windowsill and feel the draft try to cut his wrist, bread and cheese went down quiet. A dish of stewed leeks steamed in front of the king. A platter of gravlax glowed like sunset on half-melted snow. A plate of sliced plums waited on the sideboard for someone to decide that the morning should have sweetness. Soria Bellaris ate without looking as if she enjoyed it, which was a delicate trick in a king's presence. People who showed too much hunger at any table were considered one way. People who showed none were considered another. She did not show no hunger. She showed measured appetite. The king watched her as if she were a problem. He did not yet know whether to relish or regret. The queen watched the king. Princess Maelora watched Soria's hands. Othanel watched all of them and pretended to watch his cup. He liked the dining room. The old table had been carved when Old Town's best men were working along, thin style that made table legs look like the ankles of dancers. The chairs had been replaced after the accident that no one spoke of anymore, but their backs had been cut to match the old ones. The plaster was clean but not new. The fire was already too warm, and someone would have to let it damp down before the day moved out of mourning. He liked the room because it never tried to be anything other than what it was. A place where people filled their mouths, so they would not be tempted to fill the air with careless words. "Tell me about the new ships," Venara said once a slice of silence had been set on the table and allowed to cool. "Shallow draft," Soria said. They use a thick skin of tar under the planks. They pull well when the oars are long enough. But what matters more is the way they turn around ice. They taught themselves the bend, and now we must unteach it. They who? Aeroth asked. Bravos, Soria said plainly. Also the smaller houses around Valyria, not ours. We do not command them. Not command, influence. She sipped water as if it might bite her. Our influence is sufficient but not absolute. It has been sufficient for many, many years. It remains so. It is enough for flour and for iron. It is enough to make a canal full or empty when we choose. It may no longer be enough to turn a war. We do not want a war, Aeroth said reflexively, the old Targaryen terror of wasted dragons in his bones. We have spent years in the opposite. We do not want a war, Soria agreed, and something behind the word we made Othanel's ear lift. But we do want the world to remain as we prefer it. The flames, Vanara said. Tell me what you can tell me. Soria set down her cup with a careful click. Othanel would remember, later, how her fingers looked just then, how the light made the tendons into white lines under the skin. It was a small human moment in the middle of something larger. They speak differently, she said. They have always spoken. The earth is not silent. She has her mutterings. But we are attuned to certain kinds of talk and deaf to others, as all creatures are. There is speech we have taught ourselves to hear, the little lifting in the pressure before a vein of gas opens, the way a particular class of stone will sweat left-handedness when it comes near the heat. These we have known for 1,000 years. And now, she added, and Othanel felt his neck go tight. We hear a tone we have not trained ourselves for, not louder, different. Different how? Vanara asked, and Othanel, surprised, understood that the queen had asked the question so he would not. He could hear his own tongue readying the same word. It was a kindness he could live with. We bred dragons with ears for a music that would keep men safe from sudden fire, Soria said. We told ourselves it was noble work. Perhaps it was. Now we listen to the earth with instruments we built ourselves, and some of us hear a thing outside the instrument. Which of you? Aeroth asked. Too many to be delusion, Soria said. Not enough to make us feel that we have time. There are measures we will take that we will not discuss at this table. There are measures we will take that must include you. Including us obligates us, Vanara said. This was not a resistance so much as a mapping. You ask us to retrain. You ask us to move some of our young men and women and their beasts under a system not of our design. Yes. What do we gain? Aeroth asked, and the question was not cynical. It was the sort of question that kept people alive. You gain a say in the nature of the correction, Soria said. You gain an answer if the thing we correct becomes a thing that chooses instead. Also, your waters remain quick to you, and there are matters of blood. Othanel's cup made a soft sound as a tremor in his hand put it down not quite where it had been. The room adjusted to the phrase. It did not stiffen so much as thicken. Our blood, Aeroth said. All our blood, Soria said. Your house has not split itself. It has not needed to. The bonds you keep among yourselves are not merely ceremonial. The rights you keep are not old only for the sake of age. The old, after all, is not always a virtue. But in this case, the old has done what we intended it to do. We had long assumed that oldness and safety meant the same thing because we were alive to remember that we were wrong. The Synod failed to make that assumption in a recent century, Othanel said, because some things must be said by the least important man in the room, and then revised its language. Yes, Soria said, looking at him again in that sideways, not unkind way that made him feel like a word being chosen. We revised our language. Elaborate on the matter of blood, Vanara said, because she not only ran the realm, she kept its ledgers in her mind. You are about to speak of marriages. I am about to speak of marriages, Soria agreed, and of an exchange of children. If the world were still, we would have left you in peace to continue your lines as you have. We respected your arrangements. We suggest an alteration. 2 of your juniors to us for education and choosing. 2 of ours to you. They may contract or not as they will, provided the lines are kept tied where we have agreed. They will ride where we say they should ride. They will kneel where they choose to kneel, and where you will prefer them to kneel will not always coincide. You ask for hostages, Eroth said, but gently. I tell you to choose the women and men who will live past the first correction, Soria said, not cruelly. We do not like the word hostage. We prefer kin. But we will use the words that are needed. The king's hand flattened on the table. The queen's fingers tapped once on the edge of her plate. A rhythm Othanel knew from all the nights she had sat a little too long with a set of accounts and wished the numbers would reveal the joke they were playing. Princess Maelora stayed very still. Eyes widened in the way that meant she had been surprised enough to forget to pretend she had not been. You have brought this request to us before any other royal house in the West, Venara said, weighing it out. We are not arrogant enough to be flattered by the danger in that. No, Soria said. She did not smile. We do not flatter you. We ask you first because you kept your blood in one circle and because your dragons do not dissipate among too many hands. Also because you will say no to our faces, and that will be better for all of us than hearing no from a letter. The king laughed once, not the kind of laughter that made a room warmer. No, he said, does not announce itself like a revelation. It arrives in increments. Everything arrives in increments, Soria said. Even fire. After breakfast, the morning divided itself among obligations. The king walked the yard with Soria and the master of ravens and 3 knights from 3 families that would not let a moment like this pass without bearing witness to it. The queen took the princess with her to the sewing rooms for an hour, where a good deal of talk happened beneath the talk about stitches. Maester Othanel spent the time he had in the library gathering every text he had that he deemed accurate enough to place in Soria Bellari's hands. He selected an old leather-bound record of ships that had passed the gullet in the year of the Black Storm, a smaller vellum pamphlet written in an unknown hand that claimed to list the outflows of certain tributaries in the north of Valyria, and a scroll with a broken seal that described the making of seals in loving technical detail. He put them in a satchel himself. He did not trust a clerk not to pull the wrong scroll and send something explosive out into the hallway by mistake. He had just tugged the satchel's rope tight when Princess Maelora leaned against his doorframe, chin in her palm. You have chosen a present, she said. A loan, he replied, which was as much definition as declaration. To soften any offense when we refuse something else. Will we refuse something else? We always refuse something, he said. The trick is to do it in such a way that the thing you refuse becomes less important to the one you refuse it to. That sounds like a trick for a bad man. It is a trick for a careful one. She went to his table and sorted through the carved weights used to keep papers from wandering. Her fingers were nimble. She placed 2 birds and a bishop in a line and glanced up at him as if expecting him to catch a meaning that he did not see. She had not been assigned a dragon yet. She had not yet submitted to the rituals that would have made one choose her. In any other family in the West, that would have been cause for anxious gossip. In this family, it meant the elders were patient. When a rider came late to a dragon, they came with a mind that had had time to decide on itself. For a house that had not split itself even in the years when it could have used some splitting, patience was a religion. I will like her, Maelora said unexpectedly. Soria, she looks like a woman who dislikes being wrong. People who dislike that make good teachers. Sometimes, Othanel said carefully. She will ask for me, the girl said as if stating. A geometry lesson, or someone like me. Not yet. Later, when the letters have gone back and forth enough for men to believe the decision was theirs. She will ask for someone like you, Othanel agreed because lies had a way of curdling inside both ears. And if she is wise, she will ask for someone who is not like you too. I will go, Maelora said, and then bit her lip so hard the color left it, perhaps startled by the leap between thinking and saying. She stared at the satchel as if it might advise her. If they tell me to. They will not tell you, Othanel said. They will ask you in a voice that sounds like a telling. That is different in small ways that matter very much. He glanced through the window and saw Soria and the king crossing the inner yard. a line of birds scissoring across the sky above them as if the air itself had decided to annotate the conversation. Othanel felt, for a dizzy moment, the thread of his own life tugged. He imagined himself at the foot of a glass staircase in a city he had never seen and never would, because the path that ran to it was a path he had not been bred to walk. He let the feeling pass through him. Long habit kept him from holding on to any sensation that might make work harder. In the dragon pit, the blue dragon slept with half an eye open, the lid fallen into an angle that made the eye look like enamel. The young rider, whose name no one had bothered to ask because he had not offered it, sat on the floor with his back against the iron cradle and a piece of bread pinched between his fingers. He tore off bits and fed them to a small lizard that had made the mistake of wandering too close to a place where very large cousins stored their heat. The lizard did not appear to care about the mistake. It had a belly like a taut drum and was wise enough to slash its long tail out when something crossed the space it considered its own. The boy smiled at it as if he recognized in it an equal nuisance. Old Idrin, who had been born without a last name and had never needed one, leaned on the low fence and watched the scene without appearing to. He had lived in the dragon pit since the day his father had brought him here to show him the place where fear did not have to become shame. He had cleaned the ash gutters and soot stacks until his nose thought smoke was part of being alive. He had seen men freeze and women turn to water. He had wrapped the wings of birds bigger than any story ought to allow for and had whispered in a language he would not call a language to hatchlings who would not eat in their first days because the world had shocked them. He had not left the city in 60 years. He had shaken hands with the week of the big quake and with the years of the thick fog and with the day the river went sour and refused to be useful and with the shock of the first dragon to die in his care. He had never talked to a man from the freehold before today. "Your lady is a hard bean," he said to the young rider without moving his eyes from the blue dragon's breathing. "She is a good one," the boy replied. His accent moved the words around like chessmen. "Good and hard are not enemies," Idrin said. "Will she ask us to feed her beast stone?" "We brought our stone," the boy said. He pulled a flat gray cake from the bag at his belt. "It is ground from a vein that pleases her. To change is to startle, and the chain of startlings is sometimes worse than the larger thing you feared." "Chain of startlings," Idrin repeated with pleasure. He liked new words when they fit old truths. "If you teach me to bake those cakes, I will teach you how to make an ash bed hold its heat longer when the winter insists on making fools of us. I do not care if your people have a different way that is superior. I care about the way that will keep my hands from cracking." The boy's grin showed he had not expected kindness. "My name is Garen," he said. "They told me not to tell anyone, and I am telling you. Do not betray me." "I have betrayed a chicken once," Idrin said, and ran his tongue across his lower teeth as if tasting the lie. "It was a long time ago, and she held me forgiving in her eyes. I will try not to do it again." Garen placed a bit of bread on the iron grate near his knee. The lizard fell upon it with the sincerity of small hungers. The blue dragon's long, slow breath shifted. Her wing twitched. Above the ridges of her spine, sunlight through glass scattered and made a false pattern of stars. "Does she have a name?" Idrin asked, not because he planned to use it, he would not, but because names built a ladder between strangers. "Vesper," the boy said, unafraid to say it. Perhaps he had not been taught to be cautious with names, which is to say, Evening Star. She was born in the hour between lamps. I liked the sound of it when I learned the word. She seems to like it when she cares enough to like anything. "Evening Star," Idrin said. "This city does not always see the stars that the freehold sees. The smoke writes a different sky here. Your dragons read it anyway," Garen said. He reached up without thinking and laid his palm flat on Vesper's foreleg, which was already cool to the touch. She had been sleeping. He had the relaxed posture of someone who had not yet had to earn his right to relax. Idrin could not decide whether the feeling that rose in him was envy or tenderness. He had never liked the way the world forced him to choose between the two. "We read what we are given," Idrin said. "If you stay long enough, you will learn our smoke." It might have been a threat in a different mouth. In his, it was almost a blessing. By midday, the yard outside the Red Keep wore a different face. Clothes changed. Voices changed. The stall where a man had been repairing a saddle strap in the warmth of morning had been rolled away, and a small table set in its place for scribes to make copies of notices that would be nailed at the corners of the market before Nig. Ht fell. The notice would use the wrong words. Notices often did. But the wrong words would be sufficient to let the city sleep. Or not sleep differently than usual. In the council chamber, the talk burned with low heat. Sorya's words had altered the air. It would be foolish to pretend that they had not. 2 juniors, Lord Stewart said, which was not his name but the name of his position, and the name by which everyone called him after his given name had grown irrelevant even to himself. The implication being what it is. We rarely like the offspring that return to us after others have had their hands in their raising. We are not a brood of hens, the Master of Coin said. Blood is blood. Blood is blood. Othnal repeated in his head because sometimes you needed to hear a lie to remember how to be careful of it. Ser Corrent had removed his helm, which had let his face turn softer and his hair misbehave. He leaned back in his chair and gave the ceiling the kind of look that men saved for the inside of their own eyelids when they could not sleep. We will suggest names, he said. We will suggest names, Eroth agreed, not looking at his sister, who sat by the window with her hands clasped exactly. Her expression composed into the blank that made men underestimate both her patience and her appetite. They will decline them and then accept them in a version that suits them and call it our idea. We will make a list of pairs. We will include reckless kin and sensible kin, and kin we cannot lose and kin we are willing to place in a set of circumstances where we may lose them. We will not call any of it hostage-taking unless we are forced to. We will phrase the apprenticeship as an honor. We will suggest timeframes long enough to ensure that none of our children will lose their speech. Which of our children? The Queen asked softly, and silence made itself present in the room as if it had been there all along and simply needed an invitation. Maelora will not go, the King said. He met his daughter's eyes and saw no complaint there. She was a terrible liar, which boded well for her soul and poorly for her politics. She is arranged already with the tasks we have already set her, but someone close to her age will. Not the boys who still flinch around fire. Not men whose love for their horses exceeds their love for the sky. Men and women who do not tremble when they meet a stranger's eye. Not those with stubbornness without companionship. Those who might love the feeling of their minds drawn tight like a bowstring. They all looked, without meaning to, at Othanel, who shrugged as if to suggest that he did not know why they had done so. He put the satchel on the table and slid it toward the King. These may be helpful, he said. The pamphlet particularly. The writer had the sense to list what he did not know. Rare, Lord Stewart said. The rarest virtue, the Master of Coin said, which made the Queen laugh once and bow her head over her hands, and for a brief moment the room felt human again. Outside, late sunlight polished the stones of the courtyard and then left them as it crossed to the far side of the Red Keep where the kitchens began to make their evening trial of mouths and hunger. The city under the hill swallowed its day and waited to see whether the aftertaste would be better or worse than usual. Callum took his empty pot home to his mother, who opened the purse and counted the coins and did not smile. Exactly, but squeezed his shoulder hard enough to let him know that he had done well. They ate leftover mussels and a heel of bread dipped in their own oil. They did not speak because speaking while you eat invites the day to sit down and eat with you, and some days had to be treated like sparrows. Allowed to peck at your window, ignored until they stopped. At sunset, Princess Maelora begged the hour that allowed her to go to the dragon pit and promised not to trouble the keepers with questions that would make them want to hide their better answers. She kept that promise until she saw the young rider sitting against the iron and the blue dragon breathing sleep like a tide. You are Garen, she said, as if she had been told, though no one had told her and she had liked discovering that she could guess. He started and then smiled because she had not been wrong and because youth, in any culture, puts a welcome mat on surprise. And you are the girl who will have more than one name, he said. Lady Laurie, Princess Mael. And the name the old woman in the kitchen calls you when she does not know she is speaking aloud. What name is that? She asked, intrigued despite herself. Little Wind, he said. I like it. I am not saying you are thin. It is a kind of kindness. I will accept it as a kindness, she said. Is your dragon asleep or pretending? Both, Garen said. She likes to rest where her head is. If I move away, she will move her head to keep the same distance, and you will see a thing that looks like affection but is really geometry. Do you have geometry where you live? She asked, and he laughed. We have roads, he said. We prefer to make them straight when the ground allows. That is geometry enough for me. Aegon liked her the way he liked young people who did not speak because they needed to hear their own voices. He stood nearby and pretended to adjust a brace. Maelora crouched. She was in no hurry to stand again. She did not mind dirt, another mark in her favor. She tilted her head, listening to the tick of the heat in the metal. They say the earth speaks where you come from, she said, and it could have sounded like a child talking about fables. It did not. She made a sentence into a hand extended across a strange river. She speaks, Garen said. She is not a kind mother, and she is not unkind. She is like someone who worked too hard for too long and will not be told whether to rest. That is not how people in the sept talk about the mother. I do not go in your sept, Garen said, and then, hearing the stiffness in his own words, he added, but I like the way your candles smell. Maelora smiled in spite of herself and then looked at the line of Vesper's jaw. If my parents say yes to what your lady has asked, she said, I will go if I am chosen. She did not ask them for you, Garen said. She asked them for what she always asks for, a way to keep the world from tripping. She would take you because you look like someone who might let herself be taught without letting go of the hand she arrived with. The girl looked down at her hands as if to see whether such a hand existed. And you, she asked, why did you come? Is this your first time across the narrow sea? I have crossed twice, Garen said. Once when I was a child and thought the world was a shore that never ended. Now, when I cross, I know that it does end, and that the edge is not a knife. What is it? She asked. Sometimes it is wet, he said, and sometimes it is the place where the fish decide not to be fish anymore. And sometimes it is a place where men who are sure of themselves wait to ask you questions in front of other men they wish to impress. And you answer them, she said with cool curiosity. I answer them, he said. And then I am handed a bowl of mussels that I had not expected to have, and I think the world is kind after all. You met Callum, she said, pleased to have a name for the boy she sometimes watched from behind her veil when the king let her walk the city in disguise, which he did more often than anyone in the palace would have approved if they had known. I met Callum, Garen said. He told me the word for end taste. She said the word with him at the same time, and Aegon, hearing the chiming of two young voices, felt not old but placed, like a stone in a wall that had finally been mortared right. Night took its time, the way nights do when the day has been busy and doesn't want to be told it is over. The city set its lamps and waited. The river carried lanterns westward like foolish stars, and at some point when the night had gotten itself properly dark, a tremor ran under the red keep that could have been the settling of stone or could have been something else. Othanel felt it in his ankles and did not say the word he might have said if he had been a priest. He said the numbers of his own age instead. He found that habit steadied him. When he reached the count that matched the years of his life, the tremor had passed. In the morning, the letters went out. Soria Bellaris wrote one with her own hand and then sealed it with a press that pressed nothing, only heat into the wax. The king wrote one and let Othanel choose the words for the second paragraph because sometimes it helped for a friend to put down the sentence you did not know how to say. The queen dictated one to a clerk who had a pleasant voice and a sore throat and then sent him home with a jar of the same rosemary that Callum used for his brazier. Princess Maelora went to her lessons and asked her mathematics instructor whether one could write a formula for the time it took for a dragon to learn to love a person. And when her instructor said that love could not be counted, she said she had not asked about love, only about learning. This did not make the instructor more comfortable. In Valyria, later, a man would open one of the letters and read it and call for his wife, who would wipe her wet hands on her apron and squint at the words and say that they would have to keep people come night on the stoop again this winter. In the freehold, a woman would place Soria's sealed letter on a table without opening it. and a cleric would say that she was impertinent, and she would say that she was patient, and the difference between the words would fill the room until the cleric, who was not a foolish man, asked for tea. The second day was quieter than the first in the way that a cold is quiet after a fever. The shock had spent itself. The work of making sense took the shape of tasks that could fit on lists. "You will show me the pit," Soria said to the king without ceremony, and then, after a day of walking and listening and watching keepers explain their chalk signs without apology, "We will not erase your ways to make room for ours. We will write our ways down beside yours. The animal will choose. We pretend that we are in charge. We do our best to be worthy of being allowed to pretend. You talk like a maester when you are tired," Othanel said to her once during a pause, and she surprised them both by laughing. "In a better world," she said, "I would keep a library like yours and let men with better legs climb stairs for me, and then bring me what they believed I wanted. And sometimes I would surprise them and ask for another thing." "In a better world," Othanel said, and found that the phrase did not make him sad. That night a storm came up the river, the kind that has opinions about what should be outside and what should stay in. It beat at the windows and made the dragon pit roof creak like a man's back. Vesper lifted her head and made a low sound that would have been a growl in a creature with an ordinary throat. Garen rolled to his feet and said something in the language that reminded Idrun of water over very smooth stones. Idrun watched the blue dragon settle and felt the storm unfold inside him like a map he had carried for too many years to need to look at it with his eyes. In the morning, the people whose roofs leaked got busy with buckets. Callum's brazier sputtered in the wet and then, with the willfulness of well-tended fire, decided to cooperate. People came to buy mussels, and some of them spoke of nothing but the price of rope, and some of them spoke of nothing but the woman with the chain around her neck and the way she did not bow like someone whose spine had never learned to bend. The city spread the story like butter. It made tea, in moments palatable. The accord, when it began to be a thing that could be read, took shape slowly. It would not be called a revision, not by the Red Keep. The word they chose was adjustment, which meant one thing to men who signed things and another to the people whose lives altered by small angles they would not notice until their mornings were different. It asked for 2 juniors but did not say names. It set times and places as if memorializing rain. It made a place for the word kin and another place where the word guest might be used if the speaker needed to soften a corner. Soria Bellaris made the first move in that strange chess. She came to the private dining room as the sun went down and placed on the table a small box that had been carved from something that used to be bone. It was not a showy thing. Its beauty had no ambition. She pushed it toward Princess Maelora. "For your mind," she said. "If we are kin later, or if we are not, use it when your teachers run out of instruments." Maelora opened the box with hands that tried and failed to be solemn. Inside lay a small sphere of smoked glass and a flat square of stone with a groove down the middle. There were markings along the groove that did not form words and yet were readable to anyone who had made their hands learn both a scale and a sentence. "When the world moves," Soria said, "this records the way your hand thinks about the movement. You can put the sphere in water and see the movement of your thinking. You will need to learn to be ruthless with yourself about which movement you intend. If you are gentle with yourself, you will lie." Maelora lifted the sphere, felt weightier than it should. "I will try not to lie," she said. "You will lie," Soria said. "Everyone does. Try to be quick to see it when you do." The next morning, when the rain had washed the city's face and the river had decided to behave again, the king told his sister the names he had chosen to set on the first list. The queen read the list and did not disagree, which was one of her gifts. Not disagreeing when agreement served a larger aim. Othanel wrote the names and looked at them for a long time and then rearranged the order because he cared about the shapes letters made in relation to one another. It was his superstition, and he had made peace with the foolish parts of himself. He carried the list to Soria and did not stop to make conversation. "You are quick," she said. "We are careful," which looks like quickness when there is a fire in the next street. She took the paper and read it. He watched her mouth for the small shift she had made the day she put her hand on Vesper's jaw. He did not see it, which did not mean it was not there. "2 of these I have heard of," she said. "1 I have not. I would like to meet the one I have not." "You will," he said, "though you may not like what you learn. I like to be wrong more than I like not to learn." This time it was Othanel who surprised them both by laughing. In the late afternoon, Callum watched a ship come into the harbor with a scratch along her side like a harp played wrong. Her crew shouted with relief that sounded almost like anger. He imagined the way their hands would feel later, when the rope burns had cooled and the cold lay into their wrists. He imagined the way the men would talk, not to tell the story but to make the part of themselves that had survived it feel useful. He was old now in a way that mattered only to himself. He had learned to put words to things so he would not be afraid of them. He sold a bowl of mussels to a guard who lifted his visor and tried, and failed, to be too important to blow on the steam. He took a coin from Sorya's boy, who had learned to say thank you with the weight of gratitude that made it a full sentence. He watched the sky braze itself into a color he could never name and decided that the world, which had been busy and was likely to be busier, was still his. That night, Othanel woke to a sound that did not belong to the hour. It was not a bell, not a horn, not the scrape of armor that meant a man had forgotten how to be quiet because he was carrying his own fear as well as his steel. It was something in the stone himself, a long low chord like breath held and then reluctantly let go. It might have been nothing more than the work of rain on old mortar. It might have been something his body had invented because he was tired of being calm. It might have been the earth asking again to be listened to with newer ears. He lay there and counted his age, and when he finished he started to count the ages of the people whose names he had written down that day, and when he had counted all of those he found himself making a new list he had not agreed to make. People whose ages mattered because they were likely to be asked to do something brave soon. He did not get far down that list before sleep took him back by the hand and told him sternly to put his brain away for the night. In the morning, the Freehold's second dispatch arrived with its letters all in place and its wax seal unspoiled and the smell of salt embedded in the outer edge the way it always was when a letter had been carried in a bag that had tasted of the sea. The letter told them what they already knew, which is what good letters do. It suggested that the exchange would be ceremonial and that the commercials would be practical. It ornamented the suggestion with language that made men feel important and reassured women that their children would not be maltreated. It was an old skill, and the letter was very good at it. Sorya stood with the king and the queen and the princess and Othanel and Ser Corint in the yard where the blue dragon had first come down. The day had the sharpness of a new apple. She placed her hand on Vesper's jaw and listened for a moment as if recalling something she had almost forgotten. When she lifted her head, her face had altered in that unshowy way that Othanel had seen before, as if she had taken off a helm no one else had been able to see or put one on. "We will take 2 of yours now," she said, "and leave 2 of ours. It will be easier than what follows because we are at the beginning. It is easier at beginnings, even when people do not know it. Harder at endings," Othanel heard himself say, and Sorya did not deny it. "I want to see the boy at the market again before I go," she added, and Eroth nodded like a man who had expected her to say something like that. He had a way of making unpredictability look like a thing that had been accounted for. "Callum has his brazier ready whether he is ready or not," he said, and that was as close as the king would come to saying that he liked to put himself near the people whose lives made up his realm, because he had learned that to boast of such a thing was to risk emptying it of worth. The princess stood with her hands folded. She had the look of a girl thinking about a thing she had not expected to have to think about. She had the box with the glass sphere tucked into a bag at her side, as if she had always carried it. When Sorya's gaze lit on her face and paused, the girl did not look away. "Little wind," Sorya said very softly, so only the people near her could hear. "I would like not to be blown away," Maelora said, and her voice held steady. "You may anchor yourself to a good thought," Sorya said. "Choose the thought carefully." "What thought do you anchor yourself to?" the girl asked, not because she meant to be impudent, but because you always learned more when you asked for a person and not a pronouncement. Sorya lifted her chin and adjusted the chain at her throat without thinking about the gesture. "The thought that even mistakes made with honesty have a better taste in the mouth than meal cooked with lies," she said. "End taste," Maelora murmured, and Sorya smiled just enough for the skin near her eyes to make little commas. The day turned, as days do, and at the wharf where the old boards made their low, complaining music under human feet, and the river lapped the pilings as if practicing patience. Callum looked up and saw the king walking toward him with a woman who made the air around her look like it had been polished. He stood up straight without needing his mother to poke him in the back to make him do it. He wiped his hands on his apron, which did not make them cleaner but did make him feel like a man who could be looked at by a man he admired. "My father likes your muscles," the princess said, as if that were an ordinary sentence. Callum nodded because he suspected that if he tried to speak, a sound would come out that would make him feel foolish for a month. "2 bowls, Soria said. He handed them over. He did not take the extra coin this time because he had decided that a pattern, once seen, should not be allowed to take root in a man's habits. "The end taste," Soria said after a mouthful, "reminds me of a river I do not like to cross." "I hope the beginning taste pleases you," Callum said, forgetting to be afraid. "It does," she said, "and the middle is sufficient." He laughed. He could not help it. On the periphery of his vision, the king watched the exchange with what might have been relief. 3 days ago, the city had not known this woman existed. Now she stood in their market, telling a boy that his food was honest in a tone that made the fact matter. The world did not always need to change in order to begin again. Sometimes it needed only to be seen and then redescribed. They chose, in the end, a boy named Jasserin, who had loved a horse once and then had let himself love the air more, and a girl named Alina, who had hands steadier than most people could keep when they threaded needles, and 2 freehold juniors, Garen among them, who left their dragon side reluctantly because to move away from a thing you trust is always to make a small death inside yourself. They stood in the yard and did not make speeches. They made bows that did not look quite the way bows usually look in that place. Othanel touched each of their shoulders as they passed, putting into their skin the only counsel he always had left to give. Listen, and then tell the truth that will do the least harm. Soria Bellery stood at Vesper's shoulder and looked toward the east in the way of a woman who had taught herself that nothing the sky tried to say was more important than what she knew she carried. Beyond the city's smudge, the line of the day sharpened again at the edge of the world. The earth spoke in the unheard registers under the Red Keep, and some men felt the shape of it in their bones. Most did not. The water took the boats out the way it always did. The dragon pit breathed its slow, stone-scented breath. When Soria mounted, she did not look down. She did not say farewell because farewells made too many promises. She tilted her head once and then lifted her voice in a word that was not a word, and Vesper moved, and the yard went tender in the sudden absence. The blue dragon rose. The chain at Soria's throat flashed and went dark and flashed again. The young riders who would not ride with her today watched her move away with faces that were not as blank as they wished them to be. The city took in breath and let it go and took in another. After a while, the people within it went back to their work, which is to say their lives. They did not know yet which words they would later say had been first spoken on this day. They did not know which of them would remember the taste of rosemary and mussels and smoke as the flavor of a hinge on which their world had quietly turned. They did not know whether the stone under their feet had shifted or whether only the words for it had been exchanged. They lived, and the living made them ready to stand still and to move, to argue and to agree, to ask and to answer and to ask again. Maester Othanel, returning to his tower that evening, found a single small glass bead upon the sill of his window, as if someone had pressed it there and left it without wanting to be seen. He picked it up and turned it in his hand. It was not warm, not truly. It was only a memory of warmth held in glass. He closed his hand around it and listened to the room breathe. He did not pray. He counted again, not ages this time, but the names of the things the world had taught him not to name. The note a dragon's wing makes when it is dry and in need of oil. The clotted sweetness of apple butter with salt. The sound of a child reciting a list by heart because the list has become a protection against a night that feels too large. The way a woman says the letter A when she is tired. The slight rise in laughter when something almost is, and then is, funny. The murmur in stone when the earth is telling you that she will do what she wants and that your job is to love the people who will have to live with it. The glass bead sat cool in his palm. He opened his hand and set it back on the sill. Outside, the sky was a thin dome of polished slate. Somewhere, as ever, The 14 flames spoke to those who had trained their ears to hear them. Somewhere, as always, the old cities thought their old thoughts in voices of water and fire and impatience. The Red Keep breathed. The river performed its old acts of getting larger and becoming itself again. In the days that followed, the city would learn new rhythms. Some would fit their mouths around the word kin and find that it tasted better than they had expected. Some would hold the accord like a splinter in a thumb and worry at it in the night. A boy would take a brass spoon from his mother's shelf and tap the sphere in a little box while he tried to find the way to make his hand tell a truer story. A girl would stand at a window and practice the sentence she would use to say yes when someone she had not yet met asked her a question she had not yet heard. A man would shuffle papers and try to write a paragraph that did no harm. An old keeper would bake a new kind of stone cake and be surprised to like the way it turned out. A dragon would learn the shape of a different wind. But for now, the sky was simply itself, and the world was being itself very exactly. And a woman who had eaten mussels at a market walked along the Red Keep's southern wall with her chain lifting and settling against her throat. And a king and a queen paused together at a window without speaking as a girl moved a small sphere in a groove and watched the water in a bowl answer with a line that meant something she would not be able to say aloud until she had the words for it, which is to say, until later, when the morning had become another kind of day.